1-1 rules for addition and subtracting real numbers. For our first set of examples were adding numbers with opposite signs or different signs. So we are going to, there we go. We are going to look at example A. We have 5 plus negative 5. Well, 5 plus negative 5, they're opposites, so that's going to give us 0. If we look at example 2, we have negative 5 plus negative 5. Those, again, are opposites. Just because they're in different positions within our expression doesn't mean that it's going to give us a different answer. It's the same exact thing, so it's going to give us 0 as well. Okay. Just like if we had negative 7 plus 7 or 8 plus negative 8, same thing. They're always opposites, so it's going to give us 0 as our answer. Okay, so when we have an example like 2a, we have negative 8 plus negative 3. Our signs are the same, so we're going to keep the sign and add the numbers. So 8 plus 3 gives us 11. And then we're going to keep the sign, so it's going to give us a negative 11 for our answer. If we look at example B, we have 14 plus negative 5. Now, this is the same exact thing as saying 14 minus 5. So as long as we keep the sign in front of the number with the number, we can move around our terms. So 14 minus 5 gives us 9. If we look at the next slide, we are still simplifying, but now we have more numbers than just 2 in our expressions. Okay, so we have 7 plus negative 9 plus 15 plus negative 12. Remember, if it makes it easier, you can move these numbers around as long as you keep the signs in front of them with the number. So we have first 7 plus negative 9, which is going to give us a negative 2. Remember, keep the sign in front of the bigger number, subtract the two numbers. The bigger number here without looking at the signs is the 9. The sign in front of it is negative, so we're going to keep the negative and then subtract 9 minus 7, which gives us 2, and that answer is negative 2. We're going to drop everything else down. So now we have negative 2 plus 15 plus negative 12. The negative 2 plus 15 is what we'll do first. Remember, this is the same exact thing as 15 minus 2, which is 13, plus negative 12. So now we have 13 plus negative 12, which is the same thing as 13 minus 12, which is just 1. If we look at example 4, we're doing the same exact thing, but now these numbers are given to us vertically. So we can separate these. We have a negative 291 plus 379 plus 185 minus 462. So we can do negative 291 plus 397 is going to be the same thing as 379. 379 minus 291. The 379 minus 291, we can do 9 minus 1, which is 8. 7 minus 9, you can't take 9 away from 7, so that 7 becomes a 17, making the 3 a 2. The 17 minus 9 is also 8. And then the 2 minus 2 is 0. So now this is going to give us 88 plus 185. So 8 plus 5 is 13. 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So 273 now. We're going to take that and subtract 462 from it. So that 462 is larger than the 273. So we're going to actually switch this around, and we're going to do 462 minus 273, but our answer is going to be negative because we have different signs for our numbers, and the bigger number without looking at the signs is the 462. So now subtract these two. The 2 has to turn into a 12, making the 6 a 5. You can't take 7 away from 5, so that 5 has to turn into a 15, which makes the 4 a 3. So 12 minus 3 is 9. 15 minus 7 gives us 8. And 3 minus 2 is 1. So negative 189 is our answer. Oops. When we are subtracting numbers, we have to make sure that we look at the signs. We can always turn these subtraction expressions into addition. So if we did that, for example, 5a, we have 3 minus 12. This is the same exact thing as saying 3 plus negative 12. We know those rules for addition with opposite signs. We're going to keep the sign in front of the bigger number without looking at the signs, and then subtract the two numbers. So from here, the bigger of the two numbers between the 12 and the 3 is the 12. The sign in front of the 12 is negative, so our answer is going to be negative. Now we're going to subtract the 12 and the 3. So 12 minus 3 is 9. The sign in front of it is negative, so it's negative 9. For B, we have negative 7 minus 1. Turn it into an addition problem. That gives us negative 7 plus negative 1. They have same signs, so we're going to keep the sign and add the numbers. So 7 plus 1 is 8. Keep the sign in front of it, it's negative 8. For C, they give us negative 4 minus negative 10. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. So both of these negatives are going to turn into positives, making this negative 4 plus 10. This is the same exact thing as if we move it around, 10 minus 4, which gives us 6. For D, they give us y minus y plus 6. Remember, if there's a negative out in front of a set of parentheses, that negative has to distribute in, and you change the sign on every term inside the parentheses and get rid of those parentheses. So this is going to become y minus 6. So the y minus y, it cancels out. Remember, think about it. If y was equal to 3, this would be 3 minus 3, which is just 0. So the only thing you're left with is that negative 6. If we look at example 6, we have negative 30 decreased by negative 19. So this is the same thing as saying negative 30 minus negative 19. The two negatives next to each other turn into positives, so this becomes negative 30 plus 19. You have different signs. The sign in front of the larger number is a negative, so keep the negative and subtract the two numbers. 30 minus 19 is 11. And you want to keep the sign in front of that, so that's negative 11. For B, they give us the opposite of the difference between A and B. The opposite of something means that it's being a negative times something to make it the opposite. The difference between A and B, you're subtracting the two, so that's A minus B. So if we distribute that negative in, we're going to have negative A plus B. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative A plus B. You could always switch this around so that way the negative wasn't in front of it, but you don't need to. And give me B minus A. They equal the same thing. If we look at example 7, we're simplifying 7a. We have negative times x minus 4. This is also the opposite of x minus 4, the opposite of the difference between x and 4. So you're going to distribute that negative in to give us negative x plus 4. For B, we have the opposite of negative c plus 5 minus n. So again, distribute that negative in. So it's going to be a positive c, a negative 5, and a positive n. So c minus 5 plus n. If we look at example C, we're doing the same thing. We'll distribute that negative in. So this x is going to stay, minus y plus 2. So again, you're just switching all of the signs inside the parentheses. If you could then simplify from here and combine like terms, you could do that as well. If we look at some extra examples for 1, they give us negative 8 plus negative 13. Same signs, keep the sign, add the two numbers. 8 plus 13, the 3 and the 8 give us 11, carry the 1, so it's negative 21. For B, we have 15 plus negative 9, which is the same thing as 15 minus 9, which gives us a positive 6. For 3, we have 4 plus negative 1, or 4 minus 1, which is 3 plus negative 3, which is the opposite of each other, so that's 0. For 4, we have 2 minus 4, same thing as 2 plus negative 4. That 4 is greater than the 2, so we're going to keep the sign in front of the 4 and subtract the two numbers. So 4 minus 2 is 2. Keep it negative, that's negative 2. For 5, we have 3 minus negative 1. Those negatives turn into positives to become 3 plus 1, which is 4. For 6, we have x minus parentheses x plus 1. So that negative distributes. This is going to become a negative. This is going to become a negative. This becomes a positive. So x minus 1. The two x's cancel out because it's x minus x. Remember, if we plugged in a 2 for them, 2 minus 2 is 0. And your answer is just negative 1. For our last one, we have a negative or the opposite of x minus 3. So distribute that negative. It's going to give us negative x plus 3. Remember, everything changes. So negative x plus 3.